Good evening. Welcome to our webinar, Communities of Inquiry. I am your hostess, Charlene McMillian, and I have two special guests with me this evening. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. The first guest is Linda Quintanilla. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Charlene, for having me on. My name is Linda Quintanilla. As she said, I am a 10th year teacher for secondary. I am currently a special education teacher, and I am very grateful to have a friend like Charlene.
Thank you, Linda. And my other guest is Santina Johnson.
Hi, I am Santina Johnson, also known as Mrs. Johnson, or affectionately known as Mrs. J. I'm also a secondary teacher at Morton High School, where I teach business. And it's a pleasure to be with you ladies here tonight.
Yay, thank you, Santina. All right, so we are going to be talking about community of inquiry. And a community of inquiry has three different parts: social presence, teaching presence, and cognitive presence. So the social presence part of the learning for a student is that they have some sort of interaction with other people. It can be with their teacher, it can be with other students, it could be with someone from a different school, even if you had certain groups set up like that. The teaching presence is that the teacher is very vital to the classroom, that the teacher is the expert in the subject and is able to answer questions and lead students in a certain direction when they need to be guided like that. And then the cognitive presence is that students are involved in their learning. If a student is involved in their learning, they are going to learn much more and they're less likely to check out or be less motivated. So typically, community of inquiry is for online classes. But when I looked at this, I was like, okay, I think that this applies to all classes, whether it's in person or online. And so I thought that the ladies and I would discuss tonight how we see this in, how they see this in their classrooms, and then when they were teaching online, how they saw it there. So let's start with social presence, engaging with participants. So how do you do that in your normal classroom?
Okay, so I'll start if that's okay. Social presence, I believe, in school happens in the classroom when students, obviously there's another student or teachers present with another student, and we're able to maybe even have incorporate physical movement into the classroom, purposely done. So it's purposeful and meaningful, where we're able to exchange ideas, where we're able to turn, do think pair shares, just interacting with each other. And then always taking into account social doesn't always mean that we're verbally interacting. It could be we are interacting through written documents, electronic documents. I know that's probably more online, but that's how I see social presence in the classroom.
All right. Santina or Miss J?
I'd like to add and state, I thought all those mentioned were great, Linda, because I actually utilize many of those in my classroom. But in addition to that, I would say for me, the social presence begins at the door. So as my students are coming in the morning, I make it a point to greet each of them individually as they walk in and tell them how excited I am to see them, or if it's their birthday, happy birthday, or just share something. They have a new haircut, or I see something, a change. I start there, engage them in that way. I think that is the beginning of building relationship with students. And online, when I was teaching online, I would also begin our lessons with a greeting. I would also give my students a getting to know you, at the beginning of school, and also find out things that are important to them after break and ask them how things are going. And through building those relationships, through those situations, it allowed building relationships between me and the student, but also it allowed relationship building between peer to peer, because what students often discovered in those engagements was how similar they were. Maybe they had the same birthday peradventure, or maybe they had the same favorite book or the same favorite movie, or went on a similar vacation. And what that did was build relationships with the students amongst themselves. And it also helped moving forward also with assigning of groups where they were able to find some similarities.
Good, thank you. All right, let's talk about teaching presence. So how do you set goals and give directions and make sure that the students know that you really know what you're talking about? Because that's kind of important. Like if you're going to teach calculus and they don't think you know how to multiply, that could be an issue. So.
I'll go ahead. All right,
Okay.
so I would like to use a little trick that I learned, or use of technology that I learned from you, Charlene. When you used to teach digital applications and you were our department head, I would watch some of your videos, your teaching videos, and I chuckled a little bit when you talked about, demonstrating your ability to utilize certain applications to students so they can see that you're the expert. And there were some videos, some lessons that I would come across and I say, hey, let me go ahead and record this as well so that I can answer some questions that students may have. Or maybe I had a lesson and a student may have asked me a question and it wasn't addressed in one of my previous recordings. I would re-record it to make sure that I answered any questions that had not been previously answered. So that was one way that I demonstrated knowledge and expertise in the content, as well as I currently give my students, I would say, guided lessons, meaning that I let them know what the expectations are and I support it with documents that would help them to reach mastery, but it's sequential and it builds based on the foundation that I've already created with them and demonstrating that I've already had, but I make sure they have mastery. Make sure they have mastery in that content, and then we move on to the next one. And that's how I develop my teaching presence in the classroom. And then I do my best if they have a question for me to make sure that I give them the most accurate information that I have. And when I don't know, I can also tell them I don't know, but I'll look it up. And as soon as I have the right answer or I have an understanding, I will definitely get back to you as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think that's so important because there's nothing that will ruin your expertise in their eyesight as to tell them something and then they look it up and you were wrong, so yeah, to just say, hey, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to find this for you. I think that's great.
Yeah.
So what about you, Ms. Quintanilla?
Teaching presence in the classroom definitely starts with where our students are in need of habit, of routine, of procedures. And I think in order for me to even demonstrate my teaching knowledge of subject area, I've got to demonstrate these are the rules in the class. This is how the class runs, and we've got to run through it. We've actually got to give them time to visually see the rules. Maybe they're written on the board, on a poster board. You've got to get buy-in from the students. So once those things are established, then students can actually trust you, develop that trust that, yeah, you actually do know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because we've gotten all of the other stuff out of the way. Because if you get them into the classroom and you've got to, constantly tell them to put away their cell phones, constantly, you have to do all of those things. You don't even get into the teaching piece of it to demonstrate your subject knowledge. And I think the other thing with teaching presence would be for you, and I know you touched on this, to make sure that you get back to them if you don't understand something. But I do think making those mistakes and those errors are actually important. It is important for the students to see this is how you handle when you don't know something. This is how you figure it out, so that when they don't know something, they have a model to go off of, and they can also understand and sympathize. Possibly for some of our students, that might be a long way, a learning process, but sympathize with you, like, Miss Q, you're supposed to know this. And I said, you know what,
Right.
you're right. You're right. I was supposed to know that. But now that I don't, I'm going to make sure you guys always know Miss Q is going to try again. And it makes me more human.
Oh,
And
that's
so I
great.
think that's how teaching presence really is developed in the classroom. You've got to get those norms in first. You got to develop those relationships, as Santina said earlier. And then you've got to make some mistakes with them, even if
Right.
they're on purpose.
I agree with you. You can't see me vehemently shaking my head. I'm definitely
That's okay.
agreeing with you, Linda.
Yeah. So how was teaching presence different? Or was it different when you were online? Was it more challenging and how did y'all overcome that?
Well, I just start. It definitely was more challenging. I don't think there's anybody who wouldn't say it wasn't. Um, they literally could show up to class and not be present. And in addition, there would be students who you've never seen before. And it really made me feel like I was missing a piece of them. I heard voices. When I finally got to recognize whose voices belonged to which student, then I had to learn about these students and how they learn best and how they learn best in a learning environment. So how I became present in, I would say even with the social interaction was, I did a couple of things. One of them would be, I needed to let them know that I was watching them, that they couldn't just log on and do nothing. And the way to do that would be, through different types of apps that we use, Land School, like privately, hey, I know you're not, doing what you're supposed to. What could I do to help you? Or if it took parental call, hey, immediately, I'm online right now, and your son or daughter is not, doing what they're supposed to. And initially, I felt bad, but after a while, I started developing a rapport with parents. So some of that social interaction and teacher presence really forced me to develop more um, better communication with our parents, and therefore I could start building a better communication line with the students. So I think that my teacher presence there was very dependent upon the home life. And if the home life and I wasn't able to
Mhm.
communicate with parents for whatever reason, because there's various reasons, they could have been working, they're
Yes.
helping another child, then I really, really had to rely on my students and how we were going to develop our bond. And I'll end with this. One of the things I did do, so that especially when we were in that real shutdown quarantine where people weren't even going outside, I started sending them cards in the mail. I don't
Nice.
know if all of them got them because they never mentioned it, but I started sending them cards in the mail so they had something tangible, something to look at, something to read, something that said, hey, I am thinking about you, and even though you don't get online, I'm still waiting for you. So I think that created teacher presence, a social interaction that they weren't getting. And
Nice.
it's a good idea, to just, with online learning, it was a good idea for me.
Once again, I'm shaking my head in affirmation to the things that you
Mhm.
said. I actually really like that idea about sending cards. That was really, really, that was a nice touch, Linda.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Let's talk about cognitive presence, engaging students with content. What are some of your favorite ways to engage students with content?
I can say for myself, there are a couple because I've taught several different subjects, well, contents over the year under the business umbrella. And I can definitely say when I was teaching computer science, I really enjoyed the application, how students were able to build apps. They were able to actually watch something from the development or conceive of an idea and bring that idea to life. And they were able to be creative. And I found that my students flourished during those times when they were able to utilize creativity. And they actually enjoyed learning because it was more of them. It was more student centered as opposed to teacher centered. It was almost like they had a blank
Right.
canvas with expectations at the end. However, they charted their own path to get to that end goal. So I absolutely love that experience. I also enjoy digital applications, because in those classes, another opportunity for students to be creative. You know, you teach them the
Yes.
foundational functions of an application, whether that's software application, whether that's Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, but ultimately they get to create. They get to use their own creativity for at the end goal or end project. And I just found that students enjoy that. I enjoy it. I learn so much about my students that is often not revealed when you have them doing specific tasks that you design as a teacher, whereas when they have some creativity and liberty to make some choice for themselves. So that is my input in regard to your question.
Okay.
Cognitively, so making sure that they are utilizing that memory processing, recall, comprehension, all of those things. And of course, I was working with special needs learners. I found the techniques that worked best were the ones where I engaged them in that class session and did not, so I guess long-term projects didn't work for me. Saying you have extra time, you can work on this, that didn't work. They needed specific guidelines, they needed structure, they needed a specific time, they needed an outline of what needed to be turned in. And the best assignments that I did, if I could give advice to anybody with special needs learners, the two best assignments that I did were when we had a Google Doc that was shared, and I'd had all of their names on it. I had exactly what they were to participate in, and they wrote in real time on those Google Docs. We answered questions, and I allowed the students to either answer them by coming on the mic or typing into the chat room. And it was the most engagement that I ever received, because again, I kept it, with a timeline. This is the time, you see the timer, it's up in the corner. So there's some kind of redirection going on there, just in case they left to go use the restroom. They know they've got 5 more minutes. They've got to get that filled in. They know I'm going to call on Miss X first. They know I'm going to call on Mr. B second. They know that, hey, I better get ready. I'm coming up. So I found that to be one of the most useful assignments. Engagement, not short, but at least they know what the time duration was. And I didn't leave that session that day with them having to do anything else. The second most engaging assignment that I had, where I think that they really used their not only their mental abilities, but some of their creativity, was we did watch a movie together, and it was for Black History Month. We watched a movie together, but I did not let that movie or video go on longer than about a minute. We stopped, we reflected. They already had their answer sheets in front of them. They knew the questions, and I let them know I'm going in alphabetical order. This is how, I'm going to come to. So they already knew what the expectation was. So yeah, maybe they weren't engaged in the entire video, but they made sure to watch their part. And then I was able to take that, feed off of that, and then make the next video a little longer, and then ask them a little bit more in-depth questions. So I think building, scaffolding, building on your previous lessons, and never leaving, especially for special needs learners, leaving that lesson that day undone, or requiring something outside of that time period that I was available, really helped.
Wow.
I like that, Linda.
I do too. I'm like, oh, that is really cool.
Sorry, my phone fell.
It's okay.
And you're like the Google one that you were talking about, that would work.
Share doc.
Yeah, the shared document. That would work whether in person or online, right?
It would.
Right.
Engagement. They're thinking about what, they're not only thinking about the question, they're thinking about what their responsibilities are. So they're, engaged in it. They're using their fingers for typing. So you want to get things where they're using different modalities of learning,
Yes.
Just engaging them all around.
I like that. I agree. I would definitely say that. I could also say I see that with in the business plan development, that our students, they have guidelines, they have timelines or timeframes when certain components of the business plan should be completed. But
Yes.
also, in addition to that, because I love everything you said, and I totally agree with you, Linda. I also like the fact that I think that they take it a little bit more seriously because they do have some flexibility, and it also provides an opportunity for ownership of their own learning. In many instances, when I tell them, hey, for example, we're doing costs and revenue of supplies, and so or business expenses. And so I told my students, I need you guys to write down a list of all of the expenses or supplies you might have to run a business, and they're telling me, oh, we need electricity, we need furniture. So I said, okay, now after you told me all the things that you need, what I want you to do is I want you to go online and I want you to look up how much these items cost. And I want you to be a smart shopper because you don't have a lot of money. So I want you to do some comparison shopping and determine to get the best price for these goods, because this is what you're going to need. These are going to be your expenses for your business. And ultimately it's going to determine your profit. So I love that they have guidelines, and I love the fact that they're engaged because the ownership is now placed back on them. Okay, I told you what to do. Now, when it comes to the heavy lifting, it's up to you to do more heavy lifting as opposed to relying on me to do the heavy lifting for you.
Yeah, that's good. And once again, you're making me miss teaching in the classroom. So, and Linda, I loved what you said about knowing your students, because for like Santina's students, giving them more leeway, where they can make some more choices works, but possibly for some of your students, it doesn't. And that's really important too. So I thought that was good. Yeah.
And I just will add on that, knowing your students, I think, and I'm guilty of this, I took for granted in thinking that their age, their grade, this is what they should have known. When if I was in front of them, I could see they don't know how to do research.
Yes.
I need to incorporate a lesson, but they're not in front of me. They're on a screen. They don't even show their camera. I have no idea, unless Land School's working and they actually use a Chromebook, right? That they don't know how to do research. So I think, especially with special needs students, you have to assume nothing. You have to assume they don't know how to research and go on the internet and look for this, that, and the other. And then you incorporate a lesson, and it's just scaffolding a unit or something down or an assignment down. It's 2-3 big chunks, and then the accountability piece. So that's where that, that this is coming, like Santina said, I've allowed you this time to outline everything, the due date, make, the student accountability, I think is an important piece.
Definitely.
And they'll use their brains. And
yes, definitely the accountability is important. We did that today. We had the students do the screencastify themselves. And I said, hey, okay, now that you're done, come show me what you got. And then as you come up here, I'm going to give you your points for completing this assignment.
Yeah,
so that's great.
Something else that I remember from you as well, Charlene, on the spot grading. On the spot grading, it makes a difference for students. They care about that. They care that they're going to get a immediate benefit, or there's going to be immediate results for the effort that they've invested in their assignment. And I see that it pays off.
Yes. So, all right. So in the community of inquiry, there are certain student needs or needs that students have, and you ladies have walked all over them already. So we're going to go through them, but some of them you guys could just say skip if you want, because we've already sort of covered them. You did really good. Okay. So the first one is a relationship with the teacher. Is there anything you would like to add about how students can have a relationship with the teacher, whether it's in person or online?
I think Linda and I could speak to that, because she and I were the senior class sponsors, and I believe that you develop relationships through extracurricular activities with your students. And I'm sure, even, for example, I'm not going to mention these students' names, but students that I worked with Linda, that, and I know that Linda has had this experience, oh, Miss Johnson. And some of those students who may have volunteered, with the seniors, I now have some of those students in class. And because of the relationship that we develop through extracurricular, it helps us translate it into the classroom. So it makes a huge difference. Also, me being the National Honor Society advisor, many of the students that I am the advisor for, they're not my in-class students, but when they become my in-class students, that relationship that I built with them outside of the classroom, it transfers and it translates into the classroom because we've already established some relationship as a result of those opportunities to build relationship.
That's good.
Mhm.
All right. I think we covered this one, the teacher who is present and knowledgeable. Connection with teachers through multiple avenues. We are right in my way over here, so I can't really tell. Email, video, chats, etc. How do you all do that?
So how do we connect with the students through email, video, and chat?
Yeah, do you like, which of those do you use most? Is there something that you love? Like, for example, I'll give you an example. I did a podcast not long ago, and I was interviewing this teacher, and she was telling me how she loves the chat feature on Google Classroom. So when you're in there, like when you're in a Google Meet, she loves that chat feature. Personally, I can't multitask like that. I'm not going to be able to continue teaching and read what you're saying and type to you all at the same time. So I turn that chat feature off. I don't like it until the students are like doing their own assignment. And then when they're working on their own work, then I'll turn it back on. Then I can do the chat feature. So for me, I don't like the chat feature unless it's people doing individual assignments or in their groups.
Mhm.
So what about
You know,
you?
I really did like the breakout room sessions. I was able to, do a online version of grouping, whether it be same skill or they have a class that they're working on, and I'm giving extra support. Again, we're talking about special needs students. I really did like the breakout room, or I just need to have a one-on-one conversation with you, but I can't, I'm in class, so let's go talk. So I really enjoyed the breakout room sessions. I thought though that was very creative. Whoever thought of that over at Google, that, that was a good one.
Yeah.
The chat, I did like the chat because I have students that are nonverbal. And so if I could get them to answer in chat, it counted for the session. And then we had students who just chose to be nonverbal that day. And that's okay, as long as they told me they were here, answered yes, no,
Yes.
simple responses, then I at least can say we were engaged in something, maybe not everything, or the learning objective, but we could at least get them engaged. And I think that really is the most important part, is the engagement online,
Yes.
more than the grade.
Right. I would also say for myself in my classroom, I connect with my students also through attendance questions and exit tickets, because I get to find out where they are, what they don't understand, in ways that they probably don't feel comfortable telling me in front of the classroom. And that's online and in person. I actually review content that maybe we've already covered or content that we haven't covered. I might ask them a question about how familiar they are with something, how comfortable they feel with utilizing certain applications on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being, I don't know anything about this, to 5, I think I'm a master of this, or, I need a little bit more help, and I said, well, in what area could I better assist you? So I find myself connecting with my students then, because then I can go back and I can reteach and give them the information that they need. But it's a way for me to connect with them and see where their thought process are at, where they're at in the developmental stage of mastery. So that's one method that I use. I also like games. I like playing games with students, whether they're in-person games or they're online games. They also help build relationships with students and with teachers and students,
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Connection with peers. Do you have a way that you make sure that your students are connecting with one another? Which is easier when you're in person, for sure.
Right. Yeah. The same thing Linda mentioned earlier when she talked about the breakout rooms for online. I utilize that a lot, especially for computer science. Then I would just drop into the room, and students were honest, especially if their grade relied on it. They said, "We did the work, Miss Johnson, and so he disappeared."
Right?
You know, so
Love that.
yeah, they would tell. And
Yeah.
so, that was one of the methods that I use to connect, and some of the regular methods that I use for in-person lessons is including, at the time, there were questions of the days that I would ask students. Now it's exit tickets and attendance questions. And then also I do, as was mentioned earlier, like pair sharing by Linda and
Yes.
teams. So I have students work together in teams, whether that's a team of 2, a team of 3, a team of 4, and currently in my principles of business management class, I encourage my students, select your partner wisely, because you're going to be with that
Right.
person for the remainder of the year on this project. So here's where we are. And every now and then I might run into one student who says, "Hey, I'm not working with anybody. I'd rather work by myself." And depending on the student, that may be a reality for them. I can make that a reality for them, but it's extremely rare because the goal is to help them to gain real world skills. And one of them is teamwork.
Yes. That's good. All right. Supportive discourse.
What do you mean by supportive discourse?
Conversations that would be supportive, which I feel like we have kind of covered as far as, the teacher talking the student through when they're struggling or they're failing or whatever. I feel that we may have covered most of that. So consistent, timely feedback. We definitely talked about that.
Right.
Mhm.
We talked about a good climate. See, I told you you were all over my second slide. And technical support. So where do your students go to get technical support when their computer is just not working? Or
That
a site?
definitely was a challenge. Now, I will say that I thought the district having a 1-800 hotline or a Google form on their website, that was good. That was accessible to them. However, the complications came when, okay, we're trying to walk this student through, or not myself, it would be the IT people, trying to walk them through how to fix their Chromebook, how to, get past whatever screen is preventing them from doing what they need to do. And the student themselves are having issues just understanding the directions. And for many of the IT people, this is not a knock in any way, because I would not want your job in a minute. They didn't know how to instruct the students. They didn't know how to instruct the parents who really needed stuff broken down in extremely simple terms. So I think that posed an issue. And then, of course, when it could not be fixed online, the parent and the student or the student having to go in physically into a particular building at a certain time, that presented a lot of challenges. And I sympathized on all ends regarding any student that had a broken Chromebook, or, I had a student who everything was written in a foreign language on his screen, and we walked through Google search, and I had other people helping them, and they could not get it. He had to go in to the IT, but his mother worked. She's the only one who could give him a ride. And so I will say that how we were able to support him, the initial piece and clicking the Google form and getting on the website, that was good. They did a good job of that. The other piece, and I mean, maybe they could have had a service where somebody was a runner and did go to students' houses. I mean, that could have been a job in itself. I don't know how you would solve that, but that was just an idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea, for sure.
I guess in my case, I had a chain of command. And the first chain of command would be, if there's a technical difficulty that you experience, maybe somebody in the class can assist you, maybe if you're on a team, because some situations can be supported by peers. A lot of our students are very knowledgeable about technology, and in some instances, a lot more knowledgeable than we no.
Right.
Right. And so if a student couldn't help their peer with a technological difficulty, then the next person that they will go to for support is me. Now that's the way it should have worked, but most often they would go to me first instead of going to their classmate. And
That's because they felt you were the expert, Santina.
You know, and I would often try to redirect. You know how we try to redirect them. Ask 3, then me. You
Now,
know,
is this online or in person or both?
online, yes. And especially experienced that with digital applications, because we actually had a very similar situation that you mentioned, Linda, where one of our students' screen was Chinese.
Wow.
Yes, when we were doing oh my gosh, what is it called? You know, Charlene, that we use the platform that we use for doing Microsoft Word online, the virtual platform.
Yes, I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah, so it went to Chinese and I couldn't
Mhm.
figure out how to fix it to save me. And so then
Right.
that went to the tech department. And thankfully, the tech department was able to remotely connect to the student's device, and they were able to resolve that situation. And I found it to be very useful with them. If they can remotely connect, they tend to be more useful. But oftentimes that's what I would find. If a student was having a situation where they couldn't access an extension, whether it's online or they didn't know how to utilize a certain feature, they would ask their peers and then they would ask me, because all of those are technological challenges. And if it was something beyond the scope of my knowledge, then and only then will we resort to the technology department.
Wow, that's cool. All right, well, we have run out of time, so I hope you have enjoyed learning about community of inquiry. Thank you, Ms. Quintanilla and Ms. Johnson, for being with us this evening.
Thank you for having us.
Mhm.
Thank you
See if
so
we can-
much. I enjoyed all of you ladies.
I enjoyed being here with you all also.
Have a good
Have
night.
fun.